Hey guys, my name is Aricast. I'm a previously 1K LP challenger and I've been wanting to make educational content for quite a while. This game is a game that I believe showcases quite a few decisions that differentiates higher elo players from lower elo ones, along with some intricate knowledge that higher elo players will utilize in game to make their game plans. In this game, I changed my game plan multiple times, taken conventional lines, and ultimately win out versus the strongest boards in the meta. I do want to note that this game was played in low Masters Elo, and I'm sure that this board can be outcapped by better opponents. This game was also played on 14.24, so for a few meta points will not be applicable towards the new 13.3 patch. However, since we've all been playing 14.24 for quite a while, I think most players will find this review fairly informative. First, before I start reviewing the game, I want to bring up the meta, as I think the game is 75% knowledge and 25% execution, and it is very important to understand where decisions are being based off. The game was played on the last day of 14.24, where the meta is fairly stable, and as an A-tier meta comps, feature, in my opinion, Renata, Nocturne, Urgot, 2-cost rerolls, and Silco, Academy, Emissary, and Cambaron 4-cost comps. You can see Froden and Dish Soap's TFT Academy tier list here, and they fairly line up with what I believe. The first decision of the game comes at 1-4, where an unusually high cost job gives me the options to play around a Ziggs pair, Urgot Tristana, and a Renata Morg pair. I choose to prioritize the Ziggs pair here. It usually plays very straightforward into an AP 4-cost line, being Silco usually. Heimer and Rebel Zoe are both also okay, and Ziggs is a carry that can hold your items well into stage 4 as a 2-star 2-cost. 2-star Ziggs can also likely 5-streak me into stage 3, so I consider these the most valuable units to hold. Afterwards, I have the choice of holding Renata Morg pair and Tristana Urgot. I sold the Morgs already to buy the Ziggs pair, so I'm more incentivized towards the Tristana Urgot pair. Here in terms of game plan wise, I'm seeing that I probably need to lose streak since I just have no frontline pairs and I'm likely going to have a weak frontline, so I'm not going to be able to do anything. And in the way of that, I think I'm happier playing Urgot Tristana, which is a comp that I think stabilizes a bit better than Renata reroll, especially considering that Renata is very reliant on having Singed as the frontliner, and currently I don't have any copies of him, so I'll very likely be very weak. And if I miss Singe, I might just lose the game when I roll down for it on 3-1, so. Scrap Crest and investment strategy. I don't think I really want to take investment strategy here since I don't have too many units that I would strategy. I guess I could do Urgot Tristana and that wouldn't be terrible. I am missing Urgot items though, so it's not a great augment, and honestly the most premium 2-cost reroll augment is Starry Night, and I'd probably want one of those. Though what doesn't kill you is also a very solid option for playing into Urgot, I think. Ultimately though, I do see Scrap Crest being the best option out of the initial 3, as I would instantly get a 2-star Ziggs, and with any kind of frontline upgrade, I'd very likely be able to win streak stage 2, be able to win a lot of fights stage 3, and have a pretty easy transition into a very standard scrap board on stage 4. So with that being said, I rolled the other 2. I see Superstar, which is I think not really takeable. I think it's pretty much just a family augment, and I'm not playing family. Slimin is honestly reasonable, but I do think that Scrap Crest committing to Scrap is the higher AVP average placement play, though I think there's definitely arguments to take something else here. So I decided to take Scrap Crest. I thought that giving me a +1 and a Ziggs, getting to open with Ziggs 2, Gunsoo 2-1 with any frontline, is very solid, and it also means that as soon as I roll a powder or GP, I could play a very early 4 scrap, which would be very strong, letting me streak. So here my game plan changes when I pick Scrap Crust to I want to win streak, I want to win out stage 2, win a lot of stage 3, and try to spike early with 6 scrap on stage 4, try to win as much as I can, maybe get to a cap with Rumble 2, but kind of just expect to bleed out on stage 5 to better meta comps. And so my game plan is really just to play for a top 4. I think my only real win out condition would be like hitting a 3-star Echo, since that's the only uncontested 4 cost. And I mean, it is possible. You are very rich when you play Scrap, and your board's very cheap because you're running a Powder and Trundle. It's also not the strongest line, but from my spot, I think it has the best average placement since it allows me to win streak. And in this meta, I definitely think lose streaking is a last resort. It's much better to win and figure something out than lose, miss your roll down, and then just go 8. I do want to note here in my early game that I think putting Scrap on Singed is debatable since he has no trait while Steb has Bruiser. I do think that Singed has a ability that is very valuable, so I want to scrap him to guarantee his cast. I do decide to cloak Scrap on Trundle since Trundle is a bruiser and he'll have more uptime to utilize his item. I was definitely just a bit scared that Singed might die if he got focused on the left side, and if he doesn't cast, then that's going to be very sad since his cast actually is super impactful early game. So I do end up getting to upgrade my Singed into a Blitzcrank and my Steb into a set. And then on the 2-4 carousel, I am looking to itemize my future carries, being Quirky GP mainly, and I go for a sword since Scrap is largely a defensive trait. I don't want to make tank items, so I want to make ideally 3-item GP, 3-item Quirky, and 3-item Echo, which I am able to do since each champion only requires 5 components and not 6 to be fully itemized. So here on 3-1, I get dropped a sword, bow, chain, and I'm happy making a Titans for my future Echo/Vi and leaving a sword open to be scrapped for my future GP and Quirky. So here on 3-2, I think this is one of the big pivot points of the game. I'm on a 5 streak, or 6 streak actually, and I know Piercing Lotus is my best option to keep on streaking and winning. I briefly consider taking a line of taking Heroic Grab Bag, rolling down for 6-3 since I'm going to be 2 away if I take it. I decide not to, as that sounds like a pretty for fun play, and Ziggs is usually the scrap unit that gets dropped for Rumble. I think the play overall though, I would just be gambling for 2 Ziggs and I'm going to demolish my econ anyways, and it just does not sound like that good. And there's no need for me to take that extreme of a play that essentially turns my spot from a guaranteed top 4 into a pretty much I'm 1st or 8th. However, instead of playing for a continued win streak into a normal scrap board, I am heavily considering Trait Tracker here because the 6 emblems that I can get, taking a look at the level 8 standard scrap board, of the 16 craftable and 6 uncraftable emblems available I could get, I'm able to play around Scrap, Ambusher, Bruiser, Pit, Artillerist, Rose, Dominator, Enforcer, Firelight, and even Family. Right, so out of 22 emblems, there's 9 emblems that are good for me, and just hitting 1 or 2 is probably enough, especially considering that the emblems count as items for my Scrap shield bonus. So that is 9 emblems that are good for me out of 22, and one of those emblems, a Scrap +1, is pretty much gonna guarantee me a probably like 2.0 or 2.5 at worst. So a few examples of what I can do with the various spats that is incentivizing me to take trade tracker here. If I get scrap, obviously I go 9 scrap. But if I get ambusher, I can get a Vi or Corky ambusher and +3 ambusher with just the normal echo powder board, and I can play around getting to 5 ambusher with a Jinx, Camille, Smeech. Bruiser gives my whole team 100 HP without having to play Elise, so I can drop Elise for something else, maybe like a Jace, so I get Form Plopper. I can play Pit Fighter, 4 Pit Fighter if I get a Pit Fighter +1, find a Savika or maybe a Urgot. Artillerist +1, I just get the free +1 for Corky, and Artillerist JP should be pretty good. Rose, honestly, not too sure if it's a trait I can play, but since I want to play an Elise, I can probably fit a Cassio for Dominator or LeBlanc when I find it. If I get Enforcer, it's just a free trait for Vi, and Firelight, I can make somebody jump, so just a few ideas of what Trait Tracker can do for me. So again, here my game plan definitely changes very heavily. It goes from being a win stage 2 and stage 3 and try and hit your comm and cap out around the Rumble 2 and bleed out to a top 4. Goes from that into a sack stage 3 for 5 rounds, cash out your trait tracker for 2 with 8 traits on level 8, find something to play around and try and make some Giga Cap board. And obviously if I miss my trait tracker super badly, I'll probably like bot 6 where I originally could have top 4'd pretty easily, but if I do hit, I think a large majority of my cash outs will allow me to top 4 still, and there will be some cash outs like scrap +1 that instantly just allow me to win out the game. So here I think it's definitely very important to start just thinking about your game and what your cash outs could be and how you can play around that, and what your items are and how you can play around that. Right now I think I'm very locked into a pretty much either scrap or emissary board, and with the scrap +1 and with 6 traits, I think the emissary board generally doesn't really want to use emblems, just because it's a comp that doesn't have great emblem utility. The only non-bronze trait that you generally play is for emissary, and you can't get an emissary +1, so it's not something that I think is very pivotable into. So in this game, I immediately lose 3-2 to a guy I could have won against if I had Piercing Lotus. It's kind of fine though, since I get run over right after that on 3-3 by a 6 Autonoma board, so guess I'm a little lucky that I converted my game plan, because if I was trying to win and I lost 3-3, I would have been super poor and playing a line that's weak, and so my AVP probably gets pretty close to a 4.5, and it just depends on if other people bleed out before I bleed out. So with my game plan converted, my stage 3 is mostly focused around how I can get 8 traits in on 4-1. And on Kirsel, I'm able to find a swing with crit, which is really amazing. It gives me a infinity edge that I very much want on GP and Corky. I do want to make a point here that I slam IE, and usually on lose streak when you're down tempo, which I am right now, you do not want to slam items unless they are premium items. It's very important that you do so, because you don't want to make bad items while you're losing. You only want to make bad items if those items will allow you to win streak. So anyways, on 4-1 I am able to figure out a 8 trait board that I can level 4, and I'm able to cash out 1 turn before I get my augment on 4-2, and that way I can tailor my augment around what my cash out is. So I end up cashing out Automata, Ambusher, Artillerist, Canberran, Experiment, and Pit Fighter. And out of those 6, the 3 that I definitely can use are Ambusher, Artillerist, and Pit Fighter, which are very fittable into my comp. No scrap, which is unlucky since ChatGPT tells me that I have a 27% chance of getting it. I'm not gonna do the math, but 6 emblems out of 22, I need scrap. You know, a quarter chance sounds about right. So looking at the 4-2 augment now, I think another anomaly and glass cannon aren't too takeable. I'm already 48 HP from sacking 5 rounds, starting 3-2. I do not want to sack another 3-4 rounds and try spiking a scrap board on 5-1 with another anomaly, so I don't want to take that. Glass cannon is honestly a bit better for scrap, since starting at 80% HP backline isn't as bad for scrap backliners, GP and Ziggs and Quirky that get a shield at round start. However, it's only 20% damage amp for GP Quirky, and I want to itemize Vi and Echo. I already have a Titan for my frontline, so I don't think it does enough for me, especially compared to something like Bronze for Life. I think Bronze for Life can be a pretty insane augment here with the +1s I have. I could be dropping something like Powder for Rumble, keeping 2 Ambusher that way, playing a Blitz for Dominator Automata with my Spat Artillerist in for free. Probably nothing with Chem Burn and Experiment. And getting 2 Pi without Vi, getting 2 Pit Fighter without Vi, so my board could look something like this on 8, which is pretty good considering I'm playing 6 scrap and 7 bronze traits, which most Bronze for Life, most Bronze for Life boards don't get to play a vertical trait. So I rolled the other 2 options. I see Reunion and Conqueror Crest, which is untakeable. Reunion, though, seems like a very insane augment since I instantly get a Vi and Echo 2 units that I need to roll for. It instantly gives me 6 scraps, so I will semi-stabilize, and it gives me something to cap around with Vi and Echo taking the Pit and Ambusher spats for each other, and I get to play some kind of vertical Pit Fighter Ambusher board. So here I think my transition mechanics are definitely pretty bad. I could have removered my GP faster. I'm human and low GM, so my transition this turn was just getting my 6 scrap and Vi in and calling it there. I decided to take a turn figuring out my items before sending a roll down, though I think I can definitely work on getting rolled down more here. I'm losing a lot of combat power, also leaving items on bench before the fight starts. Those items are getting scrapped and utilized for shield at the start of the fight. I take this time to recognize that my carry is going to be an Ambusher Vi, and I can play mostly around that and take the scrap off eventually since it doesn't give Vi any combat power. I see Camille being a great unit since it gives me Enforcer and Ambusher, and though from previous experience playing Camille reroll in previous patches, I know that 4 Ambusher isn't the most important trait to get in, and I really want to spike on 5, so I'm happy leaving Camille off the board just for now. At this point, I'm still recognizing what my win con and carries are, and I now see that I need to roll a Vi 2 Echo 2 to stabilize my board, and I realize that I can probably win out since I hit Savika very early, and that way I'm able to play a very strong 4 Pit Fighter and 5 Ambusher when I hit a Camille Speech. For Anomaly, I do want to anomalize Vibe since I think she will be my carry, and I'm going for pretty much anything defensive here like Sea of Shurima, Avalanche of Armor, obviously probably not diving in since I do want her to be fighting at the start of the fight, but overall anything defensive I think is okay since Vi will have Ambusher, IE, BT, and she's just going to be very, very strong. This spot on 4-7, I'm recognizing that I'm too low HP to greed, especially with a Chem Burn player in the lobby, and also I just am still recognizing my win con and figuring out that I need to get this IEBT onto Vi. I'm also forgetting to frontline my Quirky. I know you're supposed to do that with Scrap, it just didn't cross my mind since this isn't really a comp that is played that much. So on 5-1 here you can see that I'm stable with a 2-star 3-item Vi alongside a fairly competitive full board. I'm able to beat the 500 Chem Burn cash out with Vi punching through a perfect Hex Armor, so I'm convinced that I'm fairly stable and don't need to roll, for example, this Echo 2. On 5-5, I'm able to grab a Firelight emblem and activate Echo's 2P straight and allow him to jump to backline, which is a huge part of what makes Echo a good unit. I double tap the 500 Kimburn cash out on 5-1 and 5-5 to send him 6th with a 7 unit loss, which convinces me that my board is really good. I then went out in stage 6 and 7 versus a super capped academy board with 2-star Jace, 2-star Rumble, Alawi Corki all with full items, and a Victor, along with beating out a 6 Automata board with Automata Mel, Kate 2, Mouse 2, Mord 2. And I just thought this was a great game to showcase that you don't need to play meta to win, and you need to identify what your game plan, your win con is, and just really maximizing placements in a lot of different areas this game. Through that. Overall, in reviewing the game, I realized that there were probably a lot of mistakes I made in terms of not scouting enough, positioning my Corki wrong, rolling late, could have transitioned better through 4-2, 4-3, 4-5. Overall though, I'm happy with how I handled a fairly unique spot and wanted to share this game as a way for newer players or players just wanting to learn how to play better. For those players to be able to pick up various different concepts such as adapting your game plan, augment selection, knowing when you're up or down tempo, and so on and so forth. I definitely love to hear your thoughts on where I could have played this game better as well, and honestly, I'm unsure about Scrapcrest and Trait Tracker, both augments. My intuition tells me that they're fairly optimal for my average placement and for my spot, but I'd love to hear your takes on that as well. Also, if you enjoy this kind of content where you get to deep dive into a single game and hear thoughts on just every facet of the game, I'm considering making more of these whenever I have what I think is a teachable game, so I'd love to hear if there is an audience for it.